Jackie with Intoxicating Arts, and today we're going to make a shaker window card using the supplies that you see here along with some other supplies. And this is a super cute stamp set by Riley & Co. And when I saw it in SimonsSaysStamp.com, I immediately knew I wanted it, and I was going to break up the sentiment and have the second half of that be on the inside of the card. And then I found this girl, which was perfect for it because she has a bunch of bags in her hand. She had a fun shopping trip and it just went great. So I got some glass seed beads for the inside of my shaker. I thought it'd make some nice little fake snow. And then these are some sequins from the dollar store. So if you're ever looking for good shaker pieces, definitely check out the dollar store. And this paper, this beautiful paper, is by Lawn Fawn, and it's called Let's Bokeh in the Snow. And they have that offered in multiple colors. I love that whole collection. So I'm going to start off by inking up this girl using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I love using this ink for watercoloring, and you can use it for alcohol inks like Copic coloring. It's a great ink, and I always make sure to heat set it before I move on to the coloring part. Also, that stamp was called Gifts Galore, and it is by Penny Black if you want to look for it in Simon Says Stamp. Alright, so on to the distress marker coloring, and I'm using Antique Linen for her skin. Vintage Photo is going to go on the dog and eventually her hair as well. I just do the outline of the images and go back in with a water brush to blend it around. It's super easy to do. It blends awesome. I am doing this on watercolor paper, and it is really nice with this particular image because of the way that it's like a sketch. You can kind of go outside the lines and it looks like you did it on purpose. So it's really easy to color because you're not worried about getting outside of the lines. So just finishing her up here using a bunch of different colors. I haven't been using my distress markers lately, and coloring this image really made me want to start using them more. They're really fun to use and they're just so easy to use. Alright, so just filling in that dog there, and then I'm going to go in with tumbled glass for some of these bags, and then broken china just to mix it up. Obviously your bags are going to be different colors or from different stores. And then wild honey just for a nice little pop of color in there. And that's the same color for the little dog's bag. And just going to dry that off here real quick to make sure it's nice and ready when I need to put it on the inside of the card. And that's actually one of the things that's different about this card, is the inside is definitely more decorated than the outside. This is an EK Success circle cutter, and I've only used it a few times, and the first couple times I didn't have a whole lot of success with it, but I was putting confidence in it and it worked pretty great. And I have this cutting grid on my desk so I don't have to put anything behind it. So I cut out a 2-inch circle there, and she fits in there perfectly, and it hides the bags. So on the outside of the card it looks like she's like pleading her case to Santa about how she deserves presents, and then you open it up and you realize, oh, she already got them. So I just thought that was so cute. And here I'm just kind of lining it up, trying to figure out where I should cut it down to make sure that's going to line up properly with that circle. So that was pretty easy. I just lined it up and then flipped it over, marked a couple spots there, and then I was able to cut it down. And you can see that circle is a little off center. That's because this is my first time making a shaker window card, so I probably could have remedied that a little bit. But also this image, part of the reason is the way I could have remedied that is making the card larger, because the image of the girl, her face is more to one side because she has a little dog and everything. So that's just kind of how it worked out on this one. And I just stamped the sentiment on the front of it using a Fiskars stamp press, and that's really convenient having the grid on the Fiskars stamp press and the grid on my mat. It really makes it easy to line it up. And this step that you see me doing here is actually completely unnecessary. You would normally just use a regular double-sided adhesive, but I got a little distracted and forgot what I was doing, and I ended up using foam tape there. So now you can see I put the acetate on top of that, and now I would need to start using foam tape because you need to make a barrier to hold your little shaker pieces. So at this point, these steps are exactly the same as if you were just going to do a regular shaker card. The part that makes it different is the fact that I'm going to be backing this part with a full sheet of paper that has a circle hole in the same spot. So you can see from the front of the card all the way through the back of the card to see her face in there. So I'm just doing a couple layers because I'm using some inexpensive adhesive from the dollar store, so it's pretty thin and I have to layer it up a few times. So once I get all that on there, I can grab my white seed beads and start filling those in. And almost done. You got to make sure there's no areas for this stuff on the inside to spill out, so you got to be careful. Alright, so here's the seed beads and just pouring those in here. I normally underfill my shakers, so I'm trying to just really make sure I have this filled up, and you'll see in a second I end up overfilling it, but the good thing is, see, she's kind of drowning in there, so I end up pulling it apart, but it was really easy to actually just pull that apart real quick and pick a few of those out of there, just make a little more room for her. And I did that, and then I shook it around a little bit, and I realized, you'll see in a second, that they're kind of sticking in there. So I guess you probably couldn't really see that, but so I grabbed my EK Success powder tool. This is normally for anti-static when you want to emboss, but it also works as anti-stick. So you can just run that along the edges there. This is a tip I saw from other crafting YouTubers, and it's a great tip. It does leave a little bit of a white residue in there, but it's not really noticeable. And I think it's worth it because then your little shaker pieces can just move freely and they're not going to be stuck all around the edges in there. So now comes the part where I need to figure out where my hole goes on the back piece of it, and it was actually pretty easy. You just want to measure some of like how far the edges of the circle are from the edges of the card, and then you can mark it, and then just that basically tells you where your circle needs to go. And my outside circle is 2 inches. I decided to make my inside circle 2 1/16 of an inch, just to have a little bit of leeway there in case I was a little off. And it means that a little bit of the foam is peeking through on the inside of it, but I really don't think the recipient is going to notice that. And it's clean cut enough that it looks good. So just put that hole right there in the actual card itself. And now I have to sit here and stack up a bunch of layers of that foam tape because I need the rest of that card front to be the same height all the way around and be supported all the way around. So that meant stacking up foam tape 3 times thick. So I just had to do that because I had such thin foam tape. So just speeding that up here so you don't have to sit and watch that forever, but it is an important part of the process. Alright, so just pop that right onto the card here. And now I can move on to the inside. I just gotta make sure she is gonna line up the way I wanted, and then I can open it up and I'm gonna mark exactly where that is because there's some empty space in there. So I took some of the scraps from making the card front and just kind of bring that design to the inside and make it look a little more finished. So I can put her on there now and just make sure my creases are good real quick. And close up the card and look at it, and then I will notice that I'm not done because the outside of it is actually still just a little too blank. And I'm also doing the rest of the sentiment real quick here. The part that says, "Forget it, I'll buy my own presents." Alright, so you can see here, I grabbed this stamp set by the ton, which I got in the Holiday Magic Stamp of Approval box. And I'm using peacock feathers because it's a pretty similar color to the rest of the card. I'm using that to stamp this, even though Distress ink is not necessarily a stamping ink, because you're going to get that mottled kind of distress look if you use it for stamping. It really didn't bother me. I still think it ended up looking pretty nice, and the stamp set is really cool because you can just pull all the little elements and stamp them however you want. There's so many different combinations for the wreaths that you can make, so it's really cool. And I think if I left the outside the way it was, it would have been just way too plain. So it definitely needed something to frame that circle. So just gonna finish off stamping around there. This part is actually pretty fun too, just figuring out how you want that to be. So now this card is actually done, and I do have a blog post on this if you want to check it out. All of the supplies I used are linked in there, and we do sell some of the supplies I used as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!